Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our Grandstream and VoIP Supply webinar series. Today, I myself here at VoIP Supply, my name is Brian Hyrek. I've been consulting with VoIP Supply for about 12 years now. We have an excellent partnership forged together with Grandstream. Today we're going to be talking about moving from PBX. Now, myself, Brian Hyrek here. This is my contact info. For those of you who are not familiar with VoIP Supply, VoIP Supply since 2002, we do have over, I'm sure that number is even far greater now, but over 125,000 customers. A couple of benefits teaming with VoIP Supply. You do have access to our DAS program. So our VoIP Supply rental program, which would allow and enable you to land your deals with devices as a service. Okay, so that's really big with resellers, service providers. Speaking of which, for many of the majors, VoIP Supply does do hardware provisioning and private fulfillment for as well. So we can do same-day provisioning and shipping out to your customers. We can also do fully and complete provisioning of PBXs as well. So everything can arrive to the end user site as plug and play as possible. We do have a marketplace as well. So if you would like to resell SIP trunks, cloud hosted services, we even have an awesome security service now as well, and cloud hosting for many of the platforms. That is an option that we do have available for you. We have some of the most competitive payouts in the industry, so I definitely advise you to get in contact with me regarding that. We did review the fulfillment, refresh and reclaim. If you guys are out on site and you come across some older Polycoms or Cisco phones, get VoIP Supply involved. We'd love to be able to take those off the customer's hands, provide you or your end customer some cash for that deal, and in a lot of cases, it helps win many deals. Okay, so we're going to talk a little more on the advantage of being a reseller with VoIP Supply. I did mention that we have some of the highest payouts in the industry. Please contact me about that. I would love to teach you about teaming with VoIP Supply to resell with our agent model various services, from Nextiva to Broadvoice to Digium, Sangoma to Grandstream's services as well. Grandstream's awesome IP video talk service that we're actually utilizing today, so it's a great showcase for that. And I'll share this slide at the end as well, but if you do just want to jot down my information, please feel free. I'd love to speak to each and every one of you. Again, today, please feel free to ask questions. We really want to keep this open and cool and engaging as possible for you guys. So feel free to chime in while my cohort and partner in crime, Abdel, goes through this presentation. We'll be happy to answer all of your questions, and let's communicate. And so with that, I will pass the torch over to Abdel, and let's take it away.
All right, thank you, Brian, and thanks everyone for being here with us today. My name is Abdel Jabbar from the Grandstream support team here in Boston. So for today's agenda, we're going to talk about the three items: shared call appearance, shared line appearance, and call park. We're going to talk about these three items because we believe these are the three options that you can use to emulate the legacy PBX functionalities on the UCM. So I'm going to go through each one of them, and at the end of the presentation, I'm going to do a live demo. I'm going to try to do the shared call appearance and the call park, and if we have enough time, I'm going to go through the shared line appearance as well. So the first feature I will discuss in this presentation is SLA, or shared line appearance. Shared line appearance basically allows multiple users to answer and make calls on a specific line, and it also provides the capability to monitor the status of the line. And one thing about SLA is that it works only with analog trunks using the POTS line. It does not work with the SIP trunk. It's not even an option under the SIP trunks. And SLA, I would say, emulates the key system functionality on the UCM. So when there is an incoming call and the phone starts to ring, the LED on the key will flash in red, and the call can be picked up by pressing this key. And this allows users to know if the line is occupied or not. And the SLA function on the UCM is basically similar to the BLF that we use to monitor extensions, except that SLA is used to monitor the external POTS lines that are connected to the FXO ports behind the UCM. And SLA has some benefits and at the same time has some limitations. With SLA, you can barge into an active call just by pressing the configured shared line. The same way it works with, like the same way we used to have phones at home with multiple handsets. SLA also gives you the option to place a call on hold on one phone and then resume it from any phone that is configured with the SLA mode. The barge and the hold options can be enabled and disabled depending on your needs. In terms of the limitations that SLA introduces, some call features like transfer, call forward, call park, and many other call features will not work with SLA. In other words, if you receive a call on shared line 1, you will not be able to transfer the call to another extension, let's say extension 1000. That is why I usually would not recommend using SLA on the UCM unless your client really wants to use the shared line appearance, because you essentially turn the UCM into a key system and you eventually lose many of the call features available on the UCM. So this brings us to shared call appearance, which I strongly recommend using instead of SLA. With shared call appearance or SCA, you can assign multiple devices to one extension and map that extension to a SIP trunk or an analog trunk. And this allows you to emulate the legacy PBX functionality like monitoring call status, barging into active calls and placing calls on hold and resuming them from any phone configured with shared call appearance. And the benefits of using shared call appearance is that you still keep the same call features available on the UCM. You can also take advantage of them. Later in the next slide, I'm going to talk about the differences between the two, so you can see that the shared call appearance has more benefits compared to shared line appearance. In terms of how to configure this option on the UCM, it's very simple. You just go to the UCM and you choose the extension that you would like to use as the shared extension. There's an option under the basic setting at the extension configuration page. It's called Enable SCA. So once you enable that option, you check that box and then you go back to Call Features, SCA. You will see that this shared extension will be populated under that page. And from that page, you can start adding more private extensions that will monitor the shared line. This is something that I'm going to show you during the live demo. So we can go through all the steps and how you can configure it from the UCM and from one of the GXP phones as well. So this is how to configure it on the GXP phone. As I mentioned, I'm going to go through this configuration when we go through the live demo. So with shared call appearance is the same thing with shared line appearance as I mentioned. You can configure, for example, you can use the shared extension or the shared line number, for example, in this case, 1005, and you can configure it as a default destination of the POTS line number 1. So every time there's a call coming in on POTS line 1, the phones they will ring all on the first account that is configured to monitor that shared line. And if, let's say, for example, phone A picks up the phone, the other two phones will have the LED turn red. This way they can't use line 1 while it's being used by the other phone. There are some other options where you can tweak this behavior. I mean, where, for example, if line 1, if phone A is using line 1, you can still use line 1 on phone B and phone C. I'm going to show you these settings when we go to the live demo of the UCM. But what I'm saying here from this slide in front of us is that you can use it to emulate the key system in the way you can use the shared line number as a default destination for incoming calls. So this way users, when there's an incoming call, it's going to ring all the private number associated with the shared line. With shared call appearance, there's also the option where you can retrieve calls on hold. And shared call appearance, the same with the shared line appearance, supports two types of putting calls on hold. We call it the private hold and the public hold. So let's say you are on phone A and you receive the call and you want to put it on hold just on your phone. You don't want anybody else to retrieve it. There is an option that shows up as a soft key on your phone that says private hold. So when you press the private hold, the call can only be retrieved from the same phone. If you want to use the public hold, which means you put the call on hold on phone A, then you can retrieve it from any phone that is configured with shared call appearance. You can use the pause button or the hold button, like the physical button on the phone. This way anybody else can retrieve it from your your environment or your network. So this is like a comparison chart between shared line appearance and shared call appearance. For shared line appearance, it maps the POTS lines to the MPK lines on the phone. You can use it to monitor the status of the POTS lines. The limitation is that it works only with analog trunks. It doesn't work with VoIP trunks. And when you use the SLA, as I mentioned earlier, you lose the benefit of so many call features available on the UCM that you cannot use when you have SLA configured on the phones. And SLA can work only with certain phone models. It doesn't work with all the models. It has the same benefits basically as a shared call appearance, where you can put a call on hold and then you can retrieve it from another phone. In terms of the shared call appearance benefits, it works with both analog and SIP trunks. It depends how you tweak it and how you configure it. You can monitor the status of the shared line number. It uses the concept of private extensions that you configure on each phone. And you keep the same call features on the UCM. You don't lose anything. There are no limitations when it comes to shared call appearance on the phones. There's also the option to barge into a call. These two options are actually, you can enable or disable them based on your needs. So we talked about SLA, we talked about SCA as alternative options to emulate the key system using the UCM. So the third option that you can use to achieve the same purpose is call park. So as you might already know, the call park feature allows you to place a call on hold so it can be retrieved from any phone that is registered to the same IP PBX just by dialing the call park extension. And call park is often useful in an environment with mini phones. For example, in a large office with a receptionist receives a call intended for another employee, the receptionist can simply park the call and page the call targets to pick up the call from specific call park extension. In the example in front of us, the receptionist parks the call using the call park soft key, and the UCM will announce the extension lot where the call is parked, and the LED configured with call park on the phone will change status on basically all the phones that are configured to monitor that call park extension. And if Steve needs to retrieve the call, all he needs to do is just press the MPK with the call park and to retrieve the call. So some of you might be asking what happens if no one retrieves the parked call. If the call is not retrieved after the timeout, it will ring back the phone that parked it in the first place. As you can see in the screenshot, the default parking timeout is 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes. You can adjust this value to anything that matches your needs. You can also configure a failover destination. If the extension that parked the call is busy and is unable to retrieve the call, let's say extension 1000 parked the call after 5 minutes, the UCM will ring back the extension 1000 while it's busy talking on the phone. You can send the call to a different destination. So this is one of the options that you can use on the settings of the call park. To be able to monitor the status of the call park extension, the phone's MPKs can be configured with the call park mode and enter the value or the call park extension. As you can see in the screenshot, MPK 7 and 8 are configured with the call park mode. So by just pressing one of the MPKs during an active call, the GXP phone will send a request to the UCM to put the call on hold and park it. And for this to work, you need to have the setting use park lot as extension checked, as shown in the screenshot taken from the web interface of the UCM. And I believe this is one of the best ways to configure call park because it allows users to choose which park extension to use besides the capability to monitor which call park is being used. And one of the examples that I saw just in a couple of last week, I think, this customer, he was using like 4 call park button. Each call park represents a department. So when there is a call for the marketing people, the receptionist just parks the call on the parking lot extension that the marketing people are monitoring, and she does the same thing with the sales people and the support people just by using the call park buttons. I mean, there are so many ways how you can do it. It just depends on your needs, your requirements, and which one you feel more comfortable with. The UCM now supports what we call the multi-slot call park. By default, for those of you who have been using the UCM for many years, you could only have one extension that you can use to park calls, which is 700. Then you have from 701 to 720. Now with the UCM, you can create multiple slots. In other words, you can create a call park slot range for specific department, and then you can create another range for another department. So when department A, they park the calls, they're not going to be monitored by department B and C. And this is something that we added in the UCM. I'm going to go through this during the live demo just to show you how you can create multiple call park slots. So this is it for the presentation. So I'm just going to jump quickly to the UCM web UI. So the first thing, I'm going to start with shared call appearance. First thing, go to extensions, And then you can choose the extension that you're going to use as the shared line number. So for this example, I'm going to use extension 1000. All you need to do is check this box that says enable SCA. So I'm going to check the box and then save. If I go back to call features, scroll down, then go to SCA, this page will be populated by extension 1000. Every time you enable SCA at the extension level, it's going to show up here. So from this page, let's look at the settings that you have. So you have some options here that you can enable or disable. So I'm going to explain each one of them so that will help you decide which ones to enable. So the first option, it says allow call retrieve from another location. Yeah, so this one allows user when there is an incoming call, so they can retrieve it from any phone. Call appearance with the group paging calls. So when you page the shared line number, let's say 1000, which we just choose, all the private numbers associated with the shared line, they're also going to ring at the same time. This option requires that the shared line number be registered to the UCM. There is also this option which is called multiple call arrangement. So when you create private extensions associated with the shared line number 1000, the private numbers, they will be able to make calls even if line 1 is busy. So let's say we have the private extension 3000 and then another extension 3001, 3002. So even if the private extension 3000 is busy, 3001 can still make and receive calls. So this option allows you to make multiple calls and also receive multiple calls on the private extensions. You can also allow bridging between locations. You can also play the warning tone when you barge into the phones. So let's say, for example, you have this option enabled and the private extension 3000 is on the phone. Just by pressing the SCA button or lifting the handset, and you have the SCA as the default one, you will be able to barge into the call. This is like the old phone system with the old handsets. So here you have the option. Do you want to play a tone, or do you want to play it only when the person barge in? Or you can configure the UCM to play the warning tone when someone barge into the call every 30 seconds. So you have none, barge in only, or repeat every 30 seconds. So I'm going to enable all of them. Then I'm going to go ahead and start creating the private extensions. So I'm going to click on the plus sign. So the first one is going to be 30,000. And then you have this option. This one should be enabled in case you want to use it. So in case you're not going to be using this extension, you can just disable it. You can, for example, if we have these two options disabled, extension 3300 will only be able to monitor the line, but it's not going to be able to receive or make outgoing calls. So the first option allows this private number to make calls, and the second option allows this number to receive calls as well. So I'm going to add another one. I'm going to call this 3301 and then save. So when I click on this, I have two private extensions associated with the shared line number 1000. So I'm going to apply all the changes. Then I'm going to go to one of the phones. To configure shared line appearance, the same way you do when you create an account, instead of using extension 1000, I'm going to be using the private numbers. So the first one is going to be 3300. The IP address of the UCM is 192.168.22.75. The SIP user ID is going to be 3300. The authenticate ID, and this is the tricky situation, you need to put the authenticate ID of the main or the shared line number, which is 1000. And then the SIP password is the SIP password associated with the extension 1000. So let me go back here to 1000 so I can get the extension. Then save and apply. And this the status should change to registered after a second, which is the case. Then, so this is the first one, register the account. Then the second step, go to Programmable Keys, and then choose line 1 because we are using account 1. Then you're going to use the mode shared associated with account 1, which we just created. And then you can call this one, for example, this is optional. I'm going to call it line 1. Then I'm going to enter the private extension, which is 3300. Save, then save the VMPK changes. And I can do this on multiple phones. So we have created 3301 as well. So you can repeat the same procedure, 3301, the IP of the UCM, and then SIP user ID again is the private extension, and the authenticate ID is the shared line number. And then we just paste the SIP password associated with the extension 1000. So probably, let me go back here. Give me just 1 second. I'm looking at these options that we have here. So it's 33. So it's both of them are registered, idle 33. So when you make a phone call, let's say to extension 1000, both of these extensions will start ringing, and then you can pick up the call from any phone and then put it on hold and retrieve it from the other extension. So this is all about the shared call appearance. It's very simple. It's very straight forward. So the next option that we're going to talk about is the call park, which is right here. Before I do that, let me just talk a little bit about the call feature codes. Sometimes in the GXP phones, when you receive a call, there is a soft key button that pops up that says call park. If you want that option to be enabled, make sure you have call park set to allow both. If you set it to disable, you're not going to have that option as a call park soft key on your GXP phone. So I'm going to set it to allow both, which was the one configured previously. Then I'm going to go to parking lot. The default range that the UCM gives you is between 701 and 720. So this is the one you can. There are multiple ways how you can park a call. You can use the soft key using the option that I just showed you, or you can transfer the call to extension 700. Then when you transfer the call to 700, the UCM will choose a call park extension from within that range, 701 to 720. We talked earlier about this option, use park lot as extension. In case you would like, for example, to go to the phones where your MPKs, let's say I'm going to choose MPK 5, and I want to use it as a call park, then you can just give it park 1. Then I want to use extension 701, save, and then save application. So when I make those changes, the LED of the phone associated to the LED number 5 will turn green, and it's going to change status whether there is a call parked at that call park extension or not. In the middle of an active call, I can just go and press the MPK5, and then the phone will send the request to the UCM to park the call. But for this to work, you need to have this option checked on the UCM. Next, we have the parking timeout, which is 5 minutes. In case you want to reduce it or add more to it, you can just change it depending on your needs again. So when you put someone on hold, there's a music on hold that plays. The UCM will play the default music on hold class folders that it has. So in case you want to change that one to something that you want to use to promote your product while people are waiting, you can just go to music on hold setting, upload music on hold class, then upload the sound files, and then come here. Once you do that, it's going to show up as an option here. Then you just go and choose that option so it can play when people are placed on hold. Then we have this option, ring or callback timeout. Let me remove this one. This option, we introduced this option in case you are using multiple registration for the same extension. Let's say you have 3 phones using extension 1000. And sometimes in the previous versions, what happens, if you put the call on hold from phone A using extension 1000, sometimes the UCM will ring the phone B with extension 1000, because the UCM always use the logic of the one that has first registered, or the one that is in the first in the list of those that registered to that extension. So in case, for example, you have 3 phones with extension 1000, and when the parked call times out, you want the UCM to ring all the extensions associated with 1000, you can check that option. There's also the failover destination, which I talked about. Let's say extension 1020, you want to have it as a failover. You can use that one as well. In case when the call, you parked it and then it times out and you don't want it to ring back the extension that parked the call in the first place, you can just enable this option. So when you enable this option, the UCM will automatically ring back the extension that you have configured under the timeout destination. So this is the first range. We talked about the multi-tenant service that callpark option gives you. So I'm going to create a different range, and this time I'm going to use, let's say, 800. Then I'm going to call this one, this is like the callpark slot for marketing, for salespeople. Then I can give them the range from 801 to 820 and just enable the same things. And I can use extension, for example, 1030 as the failover destination, then save. I can create, I believe, up to 8, because I remember I created up to 8 parking lots. So once you do that, you can assign them to different departments so they can use their own specified extension parking lot slots. So this is it for the call park. The last feature that I would like to talk about is the analog trunk, or the shared line call appearance on the analog trunk. So in case your customer, they want to use the shared line appearance and they don't want to use the shared call appearance or call park, you can always do that. So create an analog trunk and just make sure that SLA mode is enabled on the phone. Then you have some options here like a barge allowed. This is the example that I gave you earlier. So in case you want people to barge into the calls just by pressing a button, then they can merge into the call, you can have it checked. If you don't want to have this option for security reasons or any other reasons, you can uncheck it. Then you have the option to use the hold open or private. Open just basically means they want the when the calls are put on hold to be on a public hold or private hold. So if you want them to be all the time on private hold, you can choose private. Usually people, they use the public one or the open one. So I'm just going to leave it that way. So once you create your analog trunks, you go to SLA station, then you start adding the SLA stations for the phones. So I'm going to call this one, for example, line 1. SLA, let's say we're going to be using extension 1001. Since we only have one analog channel, I'm going to select that one, then save and apply. If you have multiple analog lines, you can create multiple analog SLAs. In case, for example, you want to use shared line appearance among 5 extensions, then you need to create 5 SLA stations using different extensions. So let's say in our example, I used line 1 for extension 1001 for the trunk me. So I'm going to go to one of the phones. Let me use this one. Yeah. So I'm going to use account 1 on this extension 1001. So as I mentioned, you can use the line key, press the line key, then dial the same extension, which is 1001. Then you will get a dial tone. Then you will be able to make an outbound call. The second option is you can dial the MPK3, which we configured with BLF, and then you will get a dial tone, and then you can start dialing the number that you would like to call. When there is an incoming call, you can answer the call with the line key associated with extension 1001. In case you would like to barge into a call, let's say you have 3 phones configured with SLA to monitor the same line, and someone else is using line 1 and you want to barge into it, you just need to click on MPK 3, which is associated with the BLF for that extension. So this is it for today's presentation. We still have like 5 more minutes. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to submit them in the chat area or the Q&A area, and Brian will help you ask your questions so we can provide you with the answers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it looks like there was a couple that we can address here. Let me see which ones have been saved. And okay, perfect. Everything. So working with the PRI, do you want to inform our audience and our participants what Grandstream has planned for PRIs?
Planned for it in terms of what, Brian?
Utilizing PRI gateways or PBXs, or how the clients can take in PRIs.
I mean, the UCM 6500, that one has a built-in PRI, T1 port that you can use for PRI. In case the question is related to our topic today, how you can monitor the lines, that depends on you, for example. But for the PRI, it's going to be a little bit complicated because you have so many channels. It's up to 23 channel. But in case you would like to monitor like specific channels, you can use the shared call appearance. And for each number as a default destination, you can configure one of the shared line number so the other phones can monitor it using the private number extensions.
Okay, perfect. And thank you very much. I do have a couple more questions here. Let's see. Let me scroll up to the top here. Can you have a private extension use SCA and not ring on incoming calls? For example, if you only want a few phones to ring on the lines, but everyone else is able to pick up the line and dial out or grab calls that are on hold.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but let me tell you here some settings. So as I was explaining earlier, let's say you have shared call appearance on your phone, but you don't want it to ring. You just want to use it to monitor the status of the shared line number. You can do that, but you can disable this option. So when you disable this option, you can monitor the line, but you're not going to be able to receive incoming calls. It's just the LED that's going to be changing based on whether it's busy or idle. In case you want to remove also the capability to make outbound calls, you can also uncheck this box. So the phone or the shared line extension on your phone will only be used to monitor the status of the shared line. number.
Okay, perfect. Also, can you discuss call park versus monitored call park feature usage?
Monitored call park, we introduced that one, I think, back in version 1.0.5 because we had some incompatibility issues with some IP PBXs. That's when we introduced call park. But when you're using a Grandstream phone, like a GXP phone with the UCM, you can use either of them. It's not going to make any difference. If in case you are using the GXP phone with a third-party IP PBX, it's always preferable to use the monitored call park instead of call park.
Excellent. Thank you. And does anyone else have questions that they would like to ask today? Anything while we do have Abdel on the line? Anything that we can do? And thank you so much for your participation. We greatly appreciate it. Abdel, if you change the VPK #1 from default, does the phone continue to work?
It depends. I mean, this is a good question, actually. Let me go back here. Sometimes I notice this on many phones. People, for example, they use, let's say I'm using line 1 for the account. Some people, they go to the programmable keys and they start programming all of these. If you are using line 1, you should dedicate the first one only to the default setting, which is the line 1. If you go, for example, you can configure all of them with BLF, you might have trouble. The phone is not going to be able to ring. It creates some kind of abnormal behavior from the phone. You can always change. Let's say you want to use line 1 for BLF. You can always change that. You can go, for example, to line, I would say 6, and you can use that one as the line. But you need to have one dedicated for the account that you have registered on the phone. Let's say I want to use the BLF MPK6 for the line account. I can just go choose default and then select account 1, and that's it.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. It looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. So everyone, sorry about today's technical difficulty. We appreciate you hopping back in. It's good to see that we didn't lose anyone. But anything else you need from this point going forward, please contact myself, Brian Hyrek. I'll get you in touch with Abdel if you have any technical questions. And we would love to show you the value and partnering with Grandstream and teaming with VoIP Supply for resale. They really have a super strong channel. The support gets as granular as you need to be, highly responsive, and we cannot appreciate teaming with Grandstream enough to be able to bring these opportunities and solutions to you and your end customers. So Abdel, thank you so much. All of our wonderful participants today, thank you so much for joining in, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everyone.